A gripping tale of love, betrayal, and revenge that will keep you on the edge of your seat. When Emma Rodriguez discovers her mysterious inheritance, connects her to the powerful Blackstone empire, she never expected to fall for Christopher Blackstone himself. But their forbidden attraction becomes deadly when corporate secrets, family murders, and a web of lies threaten to destroy everything they've built together. Hey there, romance lovers. Tonight we dive into a world where every choice has a cost and every moment matters. Shall we step into it? The rain hammered against the hospital windows like bullets, drop exploding into fractured light across the sterile white walls. Emma Rodriguez pressed her palm against the cold glass, watching the city blur into watercolor streaks below. 3 months since the accident. 3 months since her world had crumbled into medical bills and broken dreams. Her architectural scholarship was gone. Columbia University felt like a lifetime ago. Now she stood in the oncology ward where her mother lay dying. The Nebraska farm sold to pay for treatments that weren't working. 20 years old and drowning in debt she could never repay. Miss Rodriguez. The nurse's voice cut through her. The spiral of despair. Your mother's asking for you. Emma's worn sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as she hurried down the corridor. Past rooms filled with other people's tragedies. Her mother's room smelled of antiseptic and dying flowers, the machines beeping their mechanical lullabies. Mia, her mother whispered, her once strong hands now translucent against the white sheets. There's something I need to tell you. The words that followed shattered what remained of Emma's understanding of her life. A father she'd never known. A trust fund. An inheritance that could save everything. Locked away by lawyers and legal complications she couldn't begin to comprehend. The Blackstone family, her mother breathed, each word costing her precious. Energy. Your father worked for them. Christopher Blackstone. He owes you this. Emma's breath caught. Christopher Blackstone. The name felt familiar, like an echo from a dream she couldn't quite remember. Later that night, Emma stood outside the gleaming Blackstone Technologies building, rain soaking through her threadbare coat. The lobby was all marble and glass, a temple to wealth she'd never touched. Security guards in expensive suits eyed her suspiciously as she approached the reception desk. I need to see Christopher Blackstone, she said, her voice steadier than her hands. Tell him it's about Maria Rodriguez. The elevator ride to the 50th floor felt endless. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world of floor-toozing windows and modern art that probably costs more than most people's houses. And there, silhouetted against the city lights, stood a man who made her breath stop. Christopher Blackstone was beautiful in the way that damaged things sometimes are. Dark hair, green eyes that seemed to hold secrets, and features carved from marble by an artist who understood both perfection and pain. He wore his expensive suit like armor, but Emma could see something broken beneath the polish. Maria Rodriguez, he said, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't identify. I wondered when this day would come. You knew my mother? Christopher turned to face her fully, and Emma saw something in his expression that made her stomach twist with sudden, inexplicable recognition. Your mother, yes, and your father. The silence stretched between them like a bridge over dangerous water. He was my brother, Christopher said quietly, which makes you my niece, and the rightful heir to half of everything you see. Emma's world tilted. The rain against the windows sounded like applause, or maybe gunshots. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. The penthouse apartment Christopher gave her felt like living inside a jewelry box. Everything was crystal and silk, and the kind of quiet that only money could buy. Emma spent her first week there afraid to touch anything, sleeping on the pristine white couch instead of the king-sized bed that seemed too perfect for someone like her. Her mother's funeral had been small, attended by Christopher and a handful of neighbors from the Nebraska farm. Emma watched her uncle across the grave, noting how he stood apart from everyone else, his expensive black suit a barrier between him and the world's grief. She loved you, he'd said afterward, the first personal thing he'd shared since the night they met. Maria talked about you constantly, her drawings, your dreams. You visited her every month for 20 years. I paid for everything, but she made me promise never to tell you. She wanted you to succeed on your own merit. Now Emma understood why the medical bills had never seemed to grow beyond what they could barely manage, why the treatments had continued, even when the insurance ran out. Christopher had been there all along, a shadow guardian she'd never known existed. Living with him was like sharing space with a beautiful storm. He left early, returned late, and filled the apartment with an energy that made Emma's skin feel electric. They circled each other carefully, two damaged souls learning to occupy the same space without colliding. "You don't have to stay, Christopher," said one evening, finding her sketching architectural plans at his dining table. "The inheritance is yours regardless. You could buy your own place." Emma looked up at him, noting the careful distance he maintained, the way he seemed to expect rejection. "Is that what you want?" Something flickered in his green eyes. "What?" "I want rarely matters. It matters to me." The words hung between them, loaded with meanings neither was ready to examine. Christopher moved closer, close enough that Emma could smell his cologne, see the gold flecks in his irises. "You don't know me, Emma. You don't know what I'm capable of. Then tell me." "I've done things," he said quietly. "To build this empire, to protect it. Things that would make you run if you knew." Emma set down her pencil, studying this man who claimed to be family, but felt like something much more dangerous. "Try me." Christopher's laugh was bitter. "Father built this company on the backs of people like your mother, people who trusted us and got destroyed for it. I've spent 10 years trying to clean up his mess, but some stains don't wash out." "What kind of stains?" He was quiet for so long Emma thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Your father didn't die in an accident, Emma. He was murdered by my father's business partners. Because he tried to expose what they were doing." The apartment suddenly felt airless. Emma gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white against the dark wood. "You've known this whole time?" "I've suspected. Now I have proof." Christopher pulled out a manila folder, spreading photographs and documents across her architectural sketches like evidence of original sign. Corporate records, bank statements, and at the bottom, a photograph of a young man with Emma's eyes and her stubborn chin. "David Rodriguez, my half-brother, your father." Emma stared at the face she'd never seen, but somehow recognized. The features that explained why she'd felt that strange connection to Christopher from the moment she saw him. "Why are you telling me this now?" Christopher's expression was unreadable. "Because I'm going to destroy them. All of them. And I need you to decide if you can live with what that means." The city lights twinkled beyond the windows like fallen stars, and Emma realized she was standing at the edge of an abyss that would swallow everything she thought she knew about justice. Family and the price of revenge. Emma's decision to help. Christopher Hunt, their father's killers, changed everything between them. What had been careful distance became electric proximity, planning sessions that stretched until dawn. Shared meals where their hands touched, reaching for documents. The apartment filled with tension that had nothing to do with corporate espionage. "Marcus Webb," Christopher said, sliding another photograph across the coffee table where they'd spread their evidence like tarot cards predicting doom. "He was there the night your father died. Now he runs the city planning committee." Emma studied the man's face, memorizing features she would learn to hate. "How do we get close to him?" "He's building a new development in Brooklyn. Luxury condos that will displace 300 families." Christopher's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "He needs an architect." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Emma would apply for the job using her Columbia credentials and her Blackstone inheritance as credentials. She would get close to Webb, earn his trust, and find the evidence they needed to destroy him. What Christopher didn't tell her was how beautiful she'd become in her anger. How watching her transform from broken farm girl into avenging angel made his chest tight with something he refused to name. The night before her interview with Webb, Emma stood in front of Christopher's bedroom mirror, adjusting the designer suit he'd bought her. The woman staring back was a stranger, polished, powerful, dangerous. "You look perfect," Christopher said from the doorway, his voice rough with something that made Emma's skin flush. "I feel like I'm wearing someone else's life. I mean, that's exactly what we need." He moved closer, close enough that Emma could see her reflection in his eyes. The air between them crackled with months of unspoken want and shared purpose. "Ella," he whispered, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer or a curse. "We can't," she breathed, but she didn't step away. "I know." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with reverent gentleness. "You're my niece, my responsibility. Your what? My salvation," he finished, the words torn from somewhere deep and wounded. "And my damnation." When he kissed her, Emma understood why people started wars. The touch was soft, questioning, and when she kissed him back, the careful walls they'd built around their attraction crumbled like paper in rain. "This is wrong," Emma gasped against his mouth. "Everything about this is wrong," Christopher agreed, his forehead pressed against hers. "But I can't stop wanting you." "We're not really related," Emma said, the words coming out in a rush. "Not by blood. Does that matter?" "It's the only thing that matters." They made love with the desperate intensity of people who knew they were crossing a line they could never uncross. Christopher worshipped her body like she was something sacred and profane. And Emma gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back. Afterward, they lay tangled in silk sheets, the city lights painting patterns across their skin. "Promise me something," Christopher said, his fingers tracing lazy circles on Emma's bare shoulder. "Anything. When this is over, when we've destroyed them all, promise me you'll stay." Emma turned to study his face in the darkness, seeing vulnerability he usually kept hidden behind expensive suits and calculated smiles. "Where else would I go? Away from me, back to your real life, architecture school, normal relationships, a future that isn't built on revenge." "Christopher," Emma said softly, "you are my real life now." The next morning, Emma walked into Marcus Webb's office, wearing her armor of silk and steel, her body still humming with Christopher's touch. Webb was exactly what she'd expected. Silver-haired, predatory smile, the kind of man who saw women as objects to be collected or conquered. "Miss Rodriguez," he said, his gaze lingering inappropriately on her legs, "your portfolio's impressive. Is Columbia family money? And that fire in your eyes that says you're hungry for success?" "I want to build something that matters," Emma replied, the lies flowing smooth as honey. "Good. Because this project will make or break careers. I need someone ruthless enough to handle the complications." "What kind of complications?" Webb's smile was all teeth, the kind that require absolute loyalty and absolute silence. As Emma shook his hand, sealing a deal that would let her into the heart of his operation, she thought about Christopher waiting for her at home, about the promises they'd made in darkness and the revenge they would claim in daylight. Emma spent 3 weeks inside Marcus Webb's organization, playing the role of ambitious architect while gathering evidence of his crimes. Corporate files that proved illegal demolitions, bank records showing bribes to city officials. And finally, the Holy Grail, video footage from the night her father died, showing Webb and his associates leaving the scene. She brought it all home to Christopher like a cat presenting a dead mouse, proud and victorious. "We have them," she said, spreading the evidence across his desk. "Everything we need to destroy Webb and everyone connected to him." Christopher studied the documents with an expression Emma couldn't read. "This is good work." "Good work." Emma laughed, giddy with success and the promise of justice. "Christopher, this is everything. We can finally make them pay." "Yes," he said quietly. "We can." Something in his tone made Emma's stomach clench with sudden unease. "What aren't you telling me?" Christopher was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes distant. When he finally looked at her, Emma saw something that made her blood freeze. "I made a deal, Emma." "What kind of deal?" "Webb knows who you are. He's known from the beginning." The words hit Emma like physical blows. She gripped the edge of the desk, the room spinning around her. "That's impossible. You said I lied." Christopher's voice was flat, emotionless. "I told Webb you were coming. I told him exactly what evidence to let you find." Emma stared at him, trying to process a betrayal so complete it felt surreal. "Why?" "Because I needed you to trust me completely. I needed you to gather the evidence I couldn't access myself. And I needed Webb to think he was controlling the situation. So everything between us. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. The plan, the investigation, us. It was all manipulation, not us, Christopher said. And for the first time, his careful composure cracked. Emma, what happened between us was real. How can I believe anything you say? Emma backed away from him, her hands shaking with rage and heartbreak. The man she'd given her body and soul to had used her like a chess piece in a game she'd never understood. Because I'm trying to save your life, Christopher said desperately. Webb doesn't just want to silence you, Emma. He wants to destroy you, completely. And the only way to stop him is to make him think he's already won, by throwing me to the wolves. By making him believe you're no threat. That you're just a naive girl who got in over her head. Emma's laugh was bitter as broken glass. Naive. Yes, I suppose I was. Emma, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you seduced your own niece to further your revenge plot. Oh, you used my grief and anger to manipulate me into becoming your spy? It's not like that. Then what is it like, Christopher? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're exactly like your father. Using people until they're no longer useful, then discarding them. The comparison hit Christopher like a physical blow.
Emma?
Saw him flinch, saw pain flash across his features before the mask slipped back into place. You're right, he said quietly. I am exactly like him. Before Emma could respond, the apartment's security system chimed. Christopher glanced at the monitor, his face going white. They're here? Who's here? Webb's people. Emma, you need to run. Now, the door exploded inward in a shower of splintered wood and expensive hinges. 3 men in dark suits flooded into the apartment, weapons drawn. Marcus Webb followed behind them, his silver hair perfect, despite the violence he'd brought with him. Miss Rodriguez, he said pleasantly, as if they were meeting for coffee, instead of what was clearly going to be her execution. I must say, you've led us on quite a chase. Let her go, Webb, Christopher said, stepping protectively in front of Emma. Our business is with each other. But it's not, Webb replied, his predatory smile sharp enough to cut. You see, Christopher, you made one crucial mistake in your little game. You fell in love with your weapon. Emma felt the words like ice in her veins. Christopher had betrayed her, used her, lied to her. But seeing him stand between her and death, she realized that somewhere beneath all the manipulation, he genuinely cared about her survival. Which means, Webb continued, that the only way to truly destroy you is to make you watch her die. One of Webb's men pressed a gun to the back of Christopher's head while another grabbed Emma's arms, forcing her to her knees. Any last words, my dear? Webb asked Emma, pulling out a silver pistol that gleamed like jewelry in the apartment's soft lighting. Emma looked up at Christopher, seeing the anguish in his green eyes, the self-hatred and desperate love he could no longer hide behind careful masks. I forgive you, she whispered. It was Christopher who moved first, spinning away from the gun at his head to tackle the man holding Emma. In the chaos that followed, shots were fired, blood was spilled, and Emma discovered that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected sources. But as she watched Christopher fall, his white shirt blooming red, Emma realized that forgiveness and love might not be enough to save either of them. She had no idea that Christopher was already planning the betrayal that would destroy them both. Time fractured into crystalline moments. Christopher's blood spreading across marble floors, Webb's men shouting orders. The weight of the gun Emma somehow had in her hands, taken from a dead man whose name she'd never know. Impressive, Webb, said his silver pistol, trained on Christopher's bleeding form. But futile. You're not a killer, Miss Rodriguez. You're a builder, an architect of pretty dreams. Emma kept her weapon steady, though her hands shook with adrenaline and grief. You don't know what I am? I know you're David Rodriguez's daughter. I know you have his same naive belief that justice exists in this world. Webb's smile was cold as winter mornings. And I know you won't pull that trigger. Christopher coughed, blood flecking his lips. Emma, run. I'm not leaving you. Like father, like daughter, Webb mused. David said the same thing before I put a bullet in his chest. He thought he could expose us, destroy what we'd built. Instead, he died alone in an alley, in his secrets. Died with him. Except they didn't, Emma said quietly. Webb's confidence wavered. What? The real evidence isn't in those files I gathered. Christopher knew you'd been watching me, knew you'd make sure I only found what you wanted me to find. Emma's voice grew stronger with each word. So real evidence is already with the FBI. The Attorney General and 3 major newspapers? It's been there for weeks. Webb's face contorted with rage. Impossible. My mother didn't just know about my father's murder, Emma continued, her finger tightening on the trigger. She had proof. 20 years of proof. Christopher just needed time to verify it all, to build an airtight case. You're bluffing, am I? Check your phone, Marcus. I think you'll find some very interesting news stories about to break. Webb pulled out his phone with his free hand, his weapon never wavering from Christopher. Emma watched his face cycle, through disbelief, rage, and finally, desperate calculation. Even if that's true, he said, you both die here. No witnesses, no testimony. There's already a witness, Christopher said, his voice weak but determined. This entire conversation has been recorded, broadcasting live to the FBI. Webb spun toward Christopher, and Emma saw her moment. The gun bucked in her hands, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Webb crumpled, his silver hair spreading like a halo around his head. Emma dropped the weapon, rushing to Christopher's side. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale as moonlight. Hey, he whispered. His hand finding hers? You did it. We did it. No. Christopher's grip tightened. This was always your mission, Emma, your father's justice. I just gave you the tools. Don't you dare die on me, Christopher Blackstone. Not after everything we've been through. His smile was soft, peaceful in a way she'd never seen before. Emma, there's something else. About the inheritance. About your father. Save your strength. David wasn't my half-brother, Christopher said, each word costing him. He was your mother's husband, but he wasn't your biological father. Emma's world tilted.
What are you?
I'm saying we're not related. Not by blood, not by law. You're free, Emma. Free to live whatever life you choose. The sirens were getting closer, but Emma barely heard them over the roaring in her ears. And what life is that supposed to be? Without you. Good life. A clean life.
Ow.
Build your buildings. Change the world. Find someone who deserves you. I don't want someone who deserves me, Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. I want you. Christopher's eyes were growing distant, but he managed one last smile. Then I guess you're stuck with me. But Emma, promise me something. Anything. Don't let this revenge, this darkness, be all that I was to you. Remember? The good parts, too. There were only good parts, Emma lied, and Christopher laughed, the sound turning into a cough that brought up more blood. When the FBI agents finally burst through the destroyed door, they found Emma Rodriguez holding the heir to the Blackstone fortune as his life ebbed away, whispering promises about building hospitals and schools and monuments to second chances. Christopher survived. 3 surgeries and 2 months in intensive care, but he survived. The scandal that brought down Webb's entire network made national news for weeks. Emma testified before Congress, her architectural dreams replaced by a higher calling as an advocate for corporate accountability. A year later, she stood in the same hospital where her mother had died, but this time as the architect designing a new children's wing, funded by the Blackstone Foundation. Christopher found her there, studying blueprints that would become hope made manifest. Building something beautiful, he asked, his voice still carrying the rasp that would never fully fade. Building something necessary, Emma replied, not. Looking up from her work, is there a difference? Emma finally met his eyes, seeing the man who had betrayed her, saved her, and loved her through the worst of themselves. With you? No, there never was. When Christopher kissed her this time, it tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings. Outside the window, the city stretched endlessly toward the horizon, full of broken places waiting to be rebuilt. The end.